You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, March 25th. And as always, the 49ers are a content machine. And we have plenty of that to talk about today with my co-host, as always on a Monday, Weston P. Smith. Weston, how you doing today, man?
Steph, I'm fantastic. I agree with you wholeheartedly. The gift that keeps on giving, even in like the doldrums between the first few waves of free agency and the draft, there's still always something to discuss with this team.
Always. And today we had John Lynch over there at the NFL owners meetings happening this week in Orlando. John Lynch spoke today. Tomorrow we're going to get hungover Kyle Shanahan. And for now though, we got some good quotes from John Lynch. And of course, as you can imagine, he was asked about Brandon Aiyuk and any of those rumors that were kind of swirling around, in the past few weeks. And of course, John Lynch, as you can imagine, he shut that down in John Lynch fashion. He says, quote, "Nothing's going on there. We're actively talking with Brandon Aiyuk, trying to figure something out. We have a good history of working with the guys we want to get something done, and it takes two sides. So can we do that? We'll see. There's a number of different directions that it could go, but we appreciate the heck out of Brandon and who he is as a player, and we want him to be part of the Niners, and so we're going to work toward making that a reality." And if that end quote, that had a bit of broken English just because the transcript automator that I use sometimes does not get all the words right. But so this isn't really surprising. I mean, you would expect that John Lynch would kind of shut down the rumors. I still expect that John Lynch has gotten phone calls about Brandon Aiyuk just because of who Aiyuk is. And, there are wide receiver needy teams out there, but he doesn't have to divulge that information. He just has to say nothing's going on there. And, John Lynch also joked about being at Michigan Pro Day, seeing Mike Tomlin there and, them kind of laughing it off. And so, yeah, nothing's going on. It seems like the 49ers are going to continue saying the same thing. They are trying to get a deal done with Brandon Aiyuk this offseason. So, Weston, is this news even to you? Or, are you believing John Lynch? How do you interpret all of this? Do you take it with a grain of salt? What side are you on here?
I take everything that comes from our leadership with a grain of salt, but to me, this is just the perfect political answer. We want Brandon. We appreciate all of his contributions over the years, but the truth be told, this is a negotiation and it's, sticky territory, and it can go a number of directions. The player could refuse. We don't want to offer that player exactly what they're looking for in the market. Somebody could come calling for a trade. This literally covers all angles and avenues of the topic. So it tells you nothing other than what we already know, that, hey, Brandon Aiyuk is a really good wide receiver, and this team is probably better if he is part of the roster. But it's perfect in every sense, right? So if a trade pops up right before the draft, John can just point back and say, look, I told you, we were exploring all avenues. This can go a million directions. Somebody made an offer we couldn't refuse, right? It covers all of their bases, but nothing new from this. And I still think, the 49ers want Brandon Aiyuk to remain a 49er, but what we're running into here is the 49er curse. They extend over the summer, but there's a pending event here that you'd be wise to take advantage of if you are moving on from Brandon Aiyuk within 30 days. Just a little bit something like this is not like the loss of a compensatory pick. Like, you don't want to have to replace Brandon Aiyuk in 2025, right? Like, going into 2026, if you're going to lose him, you want to be able to replace him, or try to replace him, or get the wheels in motion around replacing him in the upcoming league year. So I think that's what I'm watching out for. Like, we're still like on that seesaw of like when we normally do things versus like the NFL draft right around the corner. So, but this, coming out of league's meeting, nothing new whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, we've been here before. Like, we get this with almost every player the 49ers are going to be extending, because the 49ers kind of, drag their negotiations out a bit. It seems always intentionally so. They don't really get into the weeds of negotiation until after the draft. So of course, people are gonna use the draft as kind of a soft deadline to potentially trade Brandon Aiyuk. And like I said, wide receiver needy teams are always going to be uh needy teams, and their fans are going to be all over it in the off season. So it's par for the course. It's normal. And look, I would expect John Lynch. This isn't going to be the last time John Lynch gets asked about, this his contract. And look, the news there as well is that it's not the last time that Brandon Aiyuk, we might hear from him as well. And almost immediately after John Lynch spoke with the media and those quotes surfaced of what John Lynch had said, Brandon Aiyuk posts this cryptic emoji. I don't know. It's not an image, but yeah, it includes an image. It looks like he's in a sauna or something.
That's what I would have
But
guessed. The sauna.
there's emojis, and basically deciphered, it says bullshit, or money talks, bullshit walks. And I I don't know what that means, right? In terms of all this, but of course, Brandon Aiyuk, at every opportunity he's had, continues to kind of stir the pot a bit. And so I ask you, Weston, how do you interpret this, especially given that he posted this really like within an hour of John Lynch having spoken with the media? I mean, what is Ayuk trying to tell us here?
I think this is like my least favorite thing about the NFL right now, is that like all of this is always just player centric, right? The players are following what's going on far more closely than your leadership teams, right? Your general managers, your owners, like they're not as active on these social media outlets as the players are. So I feel like part of this is downtime, part of this is stirring the pot, but part of this is really, really accurate. Dude is coming off an all-pro season, due for a contract very soon. No player of his caliber wants to play on their fifth-year option. So, you got to control what you can control. And right now he can control the public narrative, right? As to like, hey, what I want the 49er brass to know, what I want 49er fans and NFL fans to know is like, it's payday, baby. Like, this is my once in a lifetime opportunity. And this is one of my favorite quotes in life. Like, I think my father's been saying this too, like since I was old enough to walk, right? Like, that money talks and bullshit walks. It's put your money where your mouth is. You want me here? Prove it. Do I think this is I do not in any way, shape, or form think this is a threat of a trade me, right? That hasn't been publicized yet. This is just like, here's the deal, right? And then, I mean, if you're going to put this up, are you going to throw George Kittle's clap back on this that I saw out there?
That one I couldn't decipher. So yeah, George Kittle, being the jokester that he is, he put out a message of his own using solely just emojis, and I think obviously he was just trolling, and I couldn't even figure out what he was trying to say. So not gonna post it here, but George Kittle, always finding the humor in any situation as always. But given that this quote of an emoji, this emoji quote includes bullshit walks. I mean, is he calling what John Lynch said bullshit? until he sees the money, or what? Like, that's kind of my interpretation, right? That
Yeah.
that's what he's saying. Um and so I don't know if he's saying that Lynch
Is
is lying or something, or I don't know. Put
no,
up or shut up, right? Is kind of what he's saying here.
yeah, or he's saying that like you guys haven't even come to the table yet because that's not what you do as 49ers, right? So there I'm calling bullshit. You're saying we're negotiating, but I have nothing. And maybe this is the first step in saying before someone like Ayuk comes out and tweets or throws on Instagram or whatever it is that they haven't even offered me anything yet, right? Like this might be the favor before like it's unfortunate, but in professional negotiations, more often than not, they get ugly. More often than not, they get resolved. I mean, there you go, Steph. Like I said, like this is a saying in my own house, right? Like this is the truth. Like we
Yep.
live around this motto. I respect it. I appreciate it. What I love about what Brandon's doing is he's controlling what he can control. Period. Point blank. This is the narrative that he can control right now, and he's going to throw it out there. But I think yes, I do think there's elements focused on the bullshit of this is he's probably coming out and saying, and I would believe him if he was to say the 49ers haven't even approached us yet because they don't. They literally just don't at this time of year. And if anything, they're like, hey, we'll be in touch. We're just rounding out the rest of our roster right now, freeing up the money, sharpening the pencils, doing whatever song and dance it is we do, but we'll see you in July. Right? Like, I mean, that's what they do.
Well, John Lynch, in his kind of long-winded answer about this, did say he's been having conversations with Ayuk's team. Now, it doesn't seem like those conversations have involved Ayuk to this point because, what Lynch said is they're still talking about parameters and things like that. I guess figuring out some other things before getting into the weeds of the negotiation, which, as we know, like, and we've been saying, it happens till after the draft. Like, that is common knowledge for any 49er fan at this point. It should be common knowledge for any player as well. But like, I was thinking this earlier and I was like, players get antsy. They get antsy, and I know it's just March, but he's probably feeling, hey, I haven't heard anything yet. Yeah, you're having little conversations here with my agent, but you guys aren't talking money yet. So what's going on? Because you keep saying you want me, but you're not talking about any money yet. So I think he's just getting a little impatient, and especially because, Lynch keeps getting asked about it. He keeps talking about Brandon Aiyuk, and Ayuk's not hearing anything on his end. He's not seeing anything on his end. So, and like you said, I think this is kind of Ayuk's way of getting some leverage, some power. The off season, it's maybe a little boring. It's a bit of a lull, right? You're waiting. You're waiting to get that money. Hasn't happened yet, so I don't know. He's trying to bring the pressure on, I guess.
Let me ask you a question, Steph. Who do you actually believe more in this scenario? Do
That's a
you
good
believe
question.
what John
It's a great
Lynch is
question.
presenting, or do you believe Brandon Ayuk? So I'll add a second question in there. What would your opinion be of John Lynch if he came to the podium and said what he said of, hey, listen, we're actively speaking with Brandon and his team. We want him here long term, 49er forever, blah, 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 all the confetti, etc. Or if he came and was like, nah, we haven't even talked to dude yet. Which he can't say the latter, right? Like that's
Yeah. He
malpractice and he
can't
would
say
be
that.
crucified. So he can only really say one thing in this scenario, which is like, yeah, we're talking to him. And I think that's where Ayuk is coming out saying, bullshit. No, you're not. And I don't, listen, what's Brandon Aiyuk doing right now? Training, filming himself, putting a
In the
couple
sauna,
Instagram
apparently.
videos out there, sitting in the sauna, loving life, etc. He's got time. You know what I mean? Like he's got time to protect himself and to be his own trumpet, right? Of like, you need to pay me. Again, this matters nothing other than the course of public opinion. I assure you there's not a single person in the 49ers brass that gives a shit what Brandon Aiyuk is putting on his Instagram. And as long as it's not bashing their brand and their shield, they don't care. They literally don't care.
100%. And because they know, like, they're not panicking because they have all the leverage. John Lynch even said, like, yeah, we'd be open to having him play on the 5th-year option. Of course they would. Like, yeah, they have the leverage to do that. Brandon Aiyuk does not. He would not like that at all. But he would have little say in the matter just because of the way the CBA works now. The NFL would find the living hell out of him. So it wouldn't really work out. And I'm sure he would try to hold out or hold in, whatever, but once it gets into games, that wouldn't work out for Brandon Aiyuk. So again, this is his way of exercising, trying to exercise some leverage. And by the way, I felt like John Lynch even saying, like, yeah, like we'd be fine to have him play on the 5th-year option, just flexes some of the power that the 49ers have. And whether it was intentional or not, I don't think he was actually like trying to do that really, but it just speaks to the power that they have. It underlines it. And so this is going to be long, drawn out negotiation, as it always is. 49ers aren't worried about it, which they shouldn't be. Now, 49er fans on the other side, like, always going to be worried about it. I'm not worried about it just because I think John Lynch is right that they have shown that when it's guys they want to keep, they do make that effort to keep that player. And so I think it's going to work out. It's going to work out just the same that it has with all the other guys with Brandon Aiyuk. And yeah, but there will be many more comments from both sides between now and then. All right. It's going to be uncomfortable for us watching. It's going to get a little, little dramatic at times, but hey, just remember that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. All right. Just remember that.
Logic has to prevail here, right? Like if Brock Purdy is the quarterback of the future, which I believe that they all believe is, we can all he is a better quarterback with Brandon Aiyuk on the football field, right? A young guy, a durable guy who does everything that you ask for him, logically speaking, like you find room for that guy. And between you and I, Steph, and I think John Lynch would prefer that he plays on the 5th year because then there's the non-committal, like,
of course he would.
Prove it again. And then next year I can make the decision of do I give you all the money and I move on from formerly number 19, now number 1, or does number 1 stay and you go and we get a compensatory pick? Like, I think they would prefer that. And I think he was putting that out there because the only one with anything to lose right now is Brandon Aiyuk. He can hold out. He can do anything he wants, but that just diminishes his value a year away from the league. You'll be fine. They control your rights, man. It just is what it is. And I get protecting yourself. And if you hold out, you hold out. If this lingers, it lingers. I get all that. But the reality is I am like 99.99% certain Brandon Aiyuk is a San Francisco 49er in 2024.
Thank you. I 100% agree with you. Just a player looking to get any kind of leverage he could, and it's going to be on social media because we're going to see that a lot more often with these younger players too, by the way, and just get used to it. Let's get used to it.
Negotiation through the media, but I'll start the fanfare right now. Pay Brandon Aiyuk. All right. Is everybody happy? Right? Pay the man. Yes. Pay the man.
Let's do it. Jennifer, your wife, Weston, says, if Aiyuk leaves, Weston, do you have more jerseys of current players or past favorite players?
Easily past. Easily. She knows because we just moved. I had bins of past jerseys. Steph, I have Reggie Bush's San Francisco 49er jersey because he was a 49ers player. Jared Hayne. Do you remember Jared Hayne when everybody was excited about the rugby guy when he came over? Now
you might have to burn that one.
Yes, but it's there. Randy Moss's Torrey Smith. Like I could go on and on and on, and she knows it. She knows it.
You
She set
just,
me
I
up.
guess you like loved having guys who only played like 1 year. Like, is that kind of your thing?
That's kind of how it's ended up, but like it was never the thought that prevailed through my mind when I was investing in the jersey, you know?
Oh man,
Uh,
the Jared Hayne one is crazy though. That's wild. But
yeah.
gotta support
Yeah.
the team, man. Gotta support the team.
I
Um,
thought that was the last time I was excited about our kickoff return team, if I was being honest.
hey, that's fair. That's fair. Probably same here. But look, we had other comments from John Lynch today as well. Others that don't surround Brandon Aiyuk. So let's cleanse this episode of all of that, all right, and move on to those things. So it seems like the 49ers probably still interested in bringing in some more free agents in the next month or so. Um, could even be like after the draft. But also would welcome a reunion with Tashawn Gibson, who played safety for the 49ers this past season. He's an unrestricted free agent. The question is, does Tashawn Gibson want to continue playing, right? Like that's kind of the question I think we're all kind of waiting on. And I think that if he does kind of decide that, it makes a lot of sense for the 49ers to bring Gibson back. Another thing that, John Lynch mentioned is, Hufunga's going through his, rehab, and, it seems like he'll probably be back sooner than later, but they're happy with his progress. So I think that's a good sign for him as well, which is interesting though, because the 49ers last week brought in, was it Blackman from the Colts? And that's like a starting caliber safety. I wish someone would have asked him about that, because like saying, oh, like Hufunga's doing great in his rehab, we're really excited about that. And then also having Blackman in for a workout kind of contradicts, like, I don't know, the confidence that you might have in Hufunga returning, or I don't know, that I just wish
Okay.
someone would have asked about that. But as far as like the safety room right now, Weston, how are you feeling about it? Would you be open to bringing in Tashawn Gibson for one last ride?
Yeah, 100. I'd be open to it. I don't think that would be my first play, even with the lay of how free agency sits right now. Whether it's Justin Simmons, whether it's Julian Blackman, like a splash name. I could give you the John Lynch standard answer right now. I'd be like, oh, well, we brought him in because you can never have enough good football players. Doesn't matter what position they play, right? And then you move on. But I'd be open to Deshaun. He's been steady Eddie back there for sure. I could argue that two of his best years in his professional career were the last 2 years with the San Francisco 49ers. So have to imagine he'd be excited about that opportunity as well if he decided to continue his career. But I think the question remains is, Hufunga's recovery. How much do they love him versus how much did he play out of necessity? Because we've all agreed that he has liabilities in his game, especially in, against the pass. I mean, the dude is so Troy Polamalu-esque against the run and inside the box, but the back end of the game's a little deficient, and everybody wants to say that he and Jair Brown are just comparable players. I don't even know if that's a bad thing. If you can have if those are your two starting safeties, just having this hybrid look, of similar strengths and weaknesses. But I think if you have any questions, then yeah, you bring in a guy who can compete. And honestly, if you're concerned, I don't even care which one you're concerned about, Jair Brown or Hufunga. But if there's a concern there that one of them's not the long-term answer, then this is why maybe I'm going all in on Julian Blackman. Maybe I'm bringing in Justin Simmons because I want a long-term, at least Tyshawn Gibson is a single-year Band-Aid, right? Give me the potential 2, 3, 4, 5-year guy that you can make a splash for right now to shore up the backfield. So would I be open to it? Yes. Is that my first play? No. And the good news is because he's such a vet, you probably don't even have to make that decision. You can see how the draft falls. You can see how the next few waves of free agency fall, and he'll still answer if you come knocking.
Yep, exactly. I think that's the smart plan. Like, yes, you look into, maybe some of the top safeties that are still available, like Julian Blackman, but you also know that you have another option waiting in the wings, and Tashawn Gibson should, you know, it not work out that way. Um, I think the Hufanga thing is going to be interesting for this 2024 season. Coming off of an ACL tear. Nowadays, those aren't as catastrophic to come back from as they once were. Um, but and it seems like he's not going to necessarily miss time. He may not, right? But this is the final year of his contract, right? The 2024. So he's going to be a free agent in 2025. The 49ers probably have to make a decision on him here very soon. And bringing in Julian Blackman made me wonder, did they make that decision already? Like, Blackman is not a given to be signed by the 49ers, but it certainly tells you kind of what the 49ers are thinking there. So that's what I'm kind of curious about. I'm sure it's going to be a discussion we have all throughout this season, because I do think Hufanga and Jair Brown's skill sets are very similar. So given that, do you really need two guys who can do the same thing, or are you gonna keep Jair Brown because he's still on his rookie contract, and let Hufanga walk and bring in another safety, in the draft, see how the draft kind of falls, right? Maybe you can get someone who is going to be able to start within the next 2 years, right? Or you can bring in Blackman, right? Or I don't know, you mentioned Justin Simmons. I think Simmons is a little too rich for the 49ers right now, but again, I think it's probably getting to that point where we kind of have to question the philosophy of the 49ers as far as our safeties go within the next couple years. So definitely something to keep an eye on there.
I just think they're in a precarious state with Hufanga because coming off an ACL, unknown. But prior to that, he also was an all-pro, right? Which is voted by the league. I would say that I think that was a little overhyped with just some splash plays, but still had a good year. So there's minimal tape on who you actually have out there. And now because of the lost season, you got to make a big decision. And the truth is because of how the CBA works, like it doesn't benefit you to even cut this man right now, right? Like you might as well have him on your roster. He might as well be contributing in some capacity. Probably should get first team reps and looks just based on tape that he's put out there before. But you just know that you have a longer runway with Jair Brown, and just in terms of like the way the contract, like the contract aligns versus like you basically have a season to make that decision on Huff, and there might be too much smoke around it and like gray clouds. That I agree with you. I think they've already probably made their decision that we're going to go ahead and probably move on from this unless he blows us away in camp and looks real good coming out of there. And, if it's not Gibson, if it's not Blackman, if it's not somebody else, it's some rookie, he's going to play Huff's going to play his way onto the field. And what does he look like out on the field?
Exactly. I mean, as the 49ers like to do with a lot of different positions, they like to have options, right? It definitely feels like the 49ers are setting themselves to have many options, right? Going into the draft and even a little bit after that. Hind asks in the comments, do you think they signed Logan Ryan? Yeah, I mean, they brought in Logan Ryan. They signed him off a Disney cruise late in the season. He did play games for them, right? I think it's unlikelier that Logan Ryan re-signs with the 49ers. I wouldn't say it's impossible that as long as both sides are open to it, sure. But I don't think they need Logan Ryan like they did at the end of last season. And, that was mostly because of some injuries that they sustained there as well. So, yeah, I think it's probably a little more unlikely for Logan Ryan, maybe a little more likely for Tashawn Gibson. Let Logan Ryan enjoy his, retirement, enjoy his cruises. and not have to worry about getting called by an NFL team. He's good, I think.
Yeah. Logan Ryan at this point in his career is not the guy that you're worried about being on your roster come camp, right? And he's the guy that you're calling in October and November, out of necessity, because that's exactly what he was. There's nothing, and I mean this with the utmost respect towards Logan Ryan, but there's nothing that he's going to contribute to this roster that a rookie or an undrafted free agent can't contribute, in terms of like what we're about to go through in the summer and camp and OTAs and everything leading up to the season. There's just nothing different, except he's going to cost you more, right? Versus these other people. Yeah. So yeah, there is no scenario in my mind in which Logan Ryan's a San Francisco 49er this year, unless that happens in October, November, or December.
Here's what I think. 49ers are going to draft a safety, and they're going to bring one in the draft, or sorry, in free agency, either before the draft or after that. Seeing how it's very like the safety market's super slowed down, they'll probably wait till after the draft, if I had to guess. And that's why I think, that's where Gibson can come in and still be an option for them. And they could probably get him at the vet minimum, or something like that for whoever they get after the draft. It's going to be a great value deal. So that's what I think is least most likely to happen with the safeties. And I think, they'll have plenty of depth at that point. It'll be rounded out. Chris, thank you so much for, the kind words. And then as far as, the Deebo Samuel situation, it says the Deebo Samuel situation from a couple years ago shows me the 49ers know how to handle wide receiver extension negotiations. Yeah, I think the Deebo was like, that situation was like the epitome of, I guess, like what could go wrong in these negotiations when you kind of, drag it out a little bit. And yet, all turned out well for the 49ers, as it does. I mean, you could even say like Nick Bosa's situation, which didn't include a lot of drama, but went to the 11th hour. That also another example of, hey, maybe let's not panic and just let them, work it out. And it seems like the 49ers find a way to work it out for the guys who they really want. So yeah, definitely think we should look back on those past experiences to form our opinions on the current ones. Couple of other notes from John Lynch's comments today. It's still staying on the injury front here. Apparently, so we knew that Charvarius Ward had a core muscle surgery. He posted about it about a month ago, shortly after the Super Bowl. Turns out George Kittle also had core muscle surgery this season. Both of those guys should be back for training camp. Hopefully, like that's something that they can put behind them. It always feels like Kittle is dealing with something. I hate that for him because like he's such a physical player. And he pays for it, right? His body pays for it. Always dealing with something, but good that both of those guys are going to be back for the 49ers. Should be back by training camp. And then the other one is, Dre Greenlaw, right? We got some updates on Dre Greenlaw. John Lynch joked and said that if it were up to Greenlaw, he's going to say he'd be ready week 1, but as we know, it doesn't always work that way, especially when you're coming back from an Achilles. So, John Lynch said it's probably more likely to be a pup situation, which would mean that Greenlaw likely starts the season on the pup list. That's about, if I'm not mistaken, like 6 to 8 weeks, I think.
I think it can go anywhere from 4 to 8, right? Don't you have to designate which, like, what allotment of weeks that you're applying to that person? Then you can only do X number of people on those lists as well.
Yeah. So Greenlaw,
there's no way he starts the season.
No, absolutely.
Tore his Achilles in the Super Bowl, and he doesn't do Aaron Rodgers like sleep in caves type regiments, right?
And we know of.
that we know
know,
of. Yeah,
Weston.
yeah. He hasn't vocalized that yet, but I don't think there's any scenario that he starts the season. Hence the insurance signing at linebacker, right? Like we always knew that was going to be a possibility. I think the more concerning thing for me is just you mentioned it with Kittle. We talk about all the time, just a physical brand of football, like, and you don't want him to change because that's what makes him him. But gosh, you'd really like to have that inline blocking second tight end that you can just take a few hits in uncomfortable body positions away from Kittle and stretch out his shelf life a little bit and let him be a little bit more of a receiver instead of your third tackle on offense, because that's essentially what he's become, especially like in crunch time. So I'd love to see that. The Mooney Ward, we knew that was the Kittle one was a surprise. The Mooney, not so much. But like this is the problem, Steph, when we talk about like run it back, because you are never just running it back. Like there's always something different. This is not done in a vacuum, right? And now the offseason looks a little bit different for these guys. Instead of training, it's recovery. Now that's good because that's rest, right? You are letting your body rest. And the last few seasons have been long seasons for 49er players, right? Because you're going all the way into the NFC Championship game, into the Super Bowl. So it's been really long seasons. So you want them to rest, but then, for rest, you're sacrificing the training and the performance and things that you need, especially when we talk about core muscle, right? Like that tends, like, it's literally in everything you do, So some good and bad to take away from that, but like, it's concerning, it's certainly concerning because you just don't want any player dealing with any injury. Like, I feel like it's like death by 1,000 cuts, right? Like it's just like one cut after another cut after another cut. And then before you know it, that just becomes the routine and these players are just never the same.
Yeah. Chris, thank you for this comment. He did clarify players on the PUP list must sit at least the team's first 4 games and then can be activated immediately after those 4 games. PUP list probably likely for Dre Greenlaw, but that's where, John Lynch did speak about Devondre Campbell, the linebacker who they signed in free agency from the Packers, as kind of like that stopgap guy. He's going to be the guy who's going to fill in for Dre Greenlaw during that time. And they like the fact he has the experience. He knows the way the 49ers play. Once again, like several times, like John Lynch pointed out the fact that for some of the guys they've signed in free agency, those guys played well or gave them fits is kind of the word or phrase he used. Like they've given Kyle fits in the past as defensive players, and so they always show greater respect for those guys. They like to sign those guys. Devondre Campbell, one of those guys, and also Lynch mentioned the connection that Kyle Shanahan has with Campbell in his time in Atlanta. So, they've practiced against each other in practice. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully Campbell could be that guy. We've talked about, Campbell's comments on social media after he was signed with the 49ers, talking about he was badly misused in Green Bay. And, actually he did elaborate on that when he did his introductory presser with the 49ers media. And he kind of said like, yeah, like I did improve at the end of the year, but that's because I was literally having meetings with Mike LaFleur and telling him like, they would talk about how he should be used and things like that. So yeah, I guess it was pretty bad. And as we know, Joe Barry, the Packers defensive coordinator, was fired at the end of the season. So yeah, maybe there's something to that, and we'll see. The 49ers certainly hope that they will use him the right way, and he still has some left in the tank, at least to fill in for however many games Dre Greenlaw misses to start the season. But Weston, let me just make sure that I hit on all the things that we wanted to talk about here.
Yeah, I was looking through that exchange.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, like we did. There's one thing that you said that kind of reminded me of something, because you said you don't want players to change the way they've played, or have to change the way they've played. Trey Greenlaw, also one of those very physical guys. The NFL, just came out with updated rules in regards to the hip drop tackle. And that's something that we had been hearing throughout the season, that it was going to be something the league was going to talk about. There was rumblings about it. NFLPA, of course, was and has been against it. But it seems like the hip drop tackle is going to be banned. And as far as the official rule proposal, this is what it says in the actual, I guess, official paperwork. Article 18, hip drop tackle. It is a foul if a player uses the following technique to bring a runner to the ground. A, grabs the runner with both hands or wraps the runner with both arms. And B, unweights himself by swiveling and dropping his hips and or lower body, landing on and trapping the runner's legs at or below the knee. And so this season, the hip drop tackle will get you a penalty of 15 yards and an automatic first down. But I did see someone else, one of the other like NFL insiders say this first year you're probably likely to see more fines than penalties, just because right now, like, and we'll see how much that holds, because we all know, like, NFL refs love to, they love to swing their power around, and I'm sure they'll, anytime they can, put themselves into the game, they will, by way of these flags. But yeah, it seems like, dude, if you're gonna do this,
Do
like,
it now.
you have to know how, you have to teach players how they should tackle. Then,
Yep.
How are they supposed to stop a Christian McCaffrey, a Deebo Samuel, if they can't stop them this way? Hip drop tackle, right? Like, yes, and in hindsight, we're getting so close to flag football at this point. Like, let me know what you think, Weston, about this, because like I'm so close to just going on a bit of a rant here.
Yeah, it's
First.
Listen, I get it, but it's just another win for offensive players in the NFL. That's all it is. This is what the league's become. It's advantage offense, disadvantage defense. To your point, right? Like, this is the way some players have been taught to tackle, even at the earliest ages coming up. When you're at a size disadvantage on defense, you're in a leverage disadvantage. You were always in reactionary mode versus like delivering the blow and having the advantage of knowing exactly where the lane is and where you're cutting, right? Like, it's just another thing to make playing defense in the NFL that much harder, and to ensure that these superstar athletes, when they're growing up, they're just going to play running back and wide receiver. They're not going to go play on the defensive side of the ball, because there's no glory. And this is more applicable, let's call it what it is, to the defensive backfield in open space and checking and trying to catch a player from behind. Can't horse collar them, right? If there's no dreads hanging out the back of the helmet, you can't grab them by their hair. And so what else are you supposed to do? Untie their shoes and tie them together real fast as they're running at a 4.4 speed down the field? I just don't understand. I understand it from the sense of, like, some injuries have come about, right? But like, you can't take all of the physicality, all of the violence, and all of the fundamental out of the game and expect it to still be the same game. You put the comment up about flag football. I've been saying this, 2028, the flag football is in the Olympics. This is even a bigger issue for the NFL and what it's going to become down the line. It sucks. Like, I hate everything about this. I don't care for this rule change at all. Like, I side with the defensive players. Like, what else? They already can't touch a player. Like, now what are they supposed to do?
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. Like, it's impossible to be a defensive player in the NFL, in today's NFL. It just got harder after today, right? And yeah, like, look, that will mean more offense, right? Which is, as far as entertainment goes, a good thing. More points, that's everyone loves more offense. Um, but yeah, what incentive do young players have to play defense? They're not going to want none. There is none, aside from maybe some of the contracts that, maybe some of those guys get, but I mean, if they can't even tackle the way they've been taught, I mean, you're just cutting off everything that they can do, basically. And my thing is, like, the NFL, twists itself into a pretzel talking about player safety, while in the same breath, let's expand to 18 games, like, with no mention, by the way, of a second bye week. So player safety, except when it comes to this, where we can make more money. That's what it all comes down to. And yeah, like, I think it hurts their product in the end, and to an extent it protects the product, but the product being the players, right? Like, the players have to be able to play if you want there to be a National Football League. But at the same time, it's not the National Football League if you're taking everything away that makes it football, So that's the thing. And there's a lot of sports that are dangerous. I always think about, like, boxing. Like, boxing is super dangerous, and boxers, when they get into boxing, they assume the risks of, everything that comes with it. And it's the same thing with football. I mean, yeah, like, player safety, um but if we're gonna be doing all this, it's like, it's not football anymore.
Why are you even
You
paying
might
the
as well
defense?
not play football if we're that worried about it, right? Like, it's just weird. It's weird, and it is going to be way more offensive focused. As far as how NFL teams react to this, and how it's going to change the game in the next 5-10 years, because there will probably be more types of plays banned by the NFL, or types of tackles banned. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how the NFL and all the teams kind of shift towards investing more in offense than defense, because you can't really do much anyway. So why does it matter who you have, right? If
Why are
you're
you even
getting
paying
limited
your
so much.
$15 million a year just for pass breakups, right? Like an
Yeah.
interception or two. Honestly, Steph, when all is said and done, like, if I remember, so this was a really hot topic this season, right? And we're talking about maybe a handful of incidents that were brought to the forefront of, like, hey, that was an egregious, like, hip drop tackle, right? Where somebody got banged up. I almost feel like they're putting this rule in, and we probably won't see much of it. But to me, it's my biggest pain is, like, it'll probably become a non-factor, in the sense of, like, I don't know if it's going to determine a game or an outcome or anything like that. We'll see that in the scenarios. We could still be proven wrong. For me, the biggest thing what's most upsetting is just another loss for the defensive side of the ball in the National Football League, right? Like, and this is going to always be the case. Every new rule is going to favor the offense and protecting the offensive players, and is just going to make playing defense in the National Football League that much more difficult. So for me, it's not so much about the rule, and this rule, it's just like, it's another L in the column for defensive players.
Which, by the way, like, defensive players are against this also because they feel like it adds more injury risk for them to now have to think about how they're going to tackle and do something that's unnatural to them. So again, just another thing that's interesting to kind of see how it plays out. But yeah, and I posted this as a joke earlier. The NFL, to all its NFL players, basically said, "Get ready to learn flag football, buddy, because it's coming."
2028. Everybody, every one of you better watch the Olympics, because that's going to be it's going to be the NFFL, National Flag
Just
Football League.
Start
That's what-
scouting those players, then they might
Yeah.
as well.
Yep. Go to your neighborhood baseball games. Go to your neighborhood, courts. Like, you're going to just be plucking these super athletes out of thin air, and they're going to be running all over a flag football field with those really tight, weird compression helmets that the kids wear these days.
Oh gosh. Well, quite
know,
the eventful Monday. For all things considered, it's the off season. But because John Lynch spoke, we had a few more things to talk about. Once again, Kyle Shanahan is going to be speaking with the media tomorrow. I will be back on Wednesday with Desi. Tomorrow I also do Bully Bowl. If you guys are subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can watch that there or at the Gold Standard Network. Weston, I know that you're kind of gearing up to change some things around on your YouTube channel. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Steph. So always in the past, you've shouted me out before, was the We're Talking Football podcast. We're parlaying. So same page destination, but you'll see now that it's going to be Island 49 and strictly 49er content go forward, partnering with Steph and, obviously some other faces, but a lot of standalone content as well. Fan-driven page. I'm a fan just like all of you. I just want to react to everything, but it's Island 49. I'm getting a Twitter handle, everything else up and running. But right now the YouTube page is set and locked and ready to go. So looking forward to it. 2024 will be a great year. We hope.
Love it. Love it. I'm really excited for you, man. Like, for anyone who, I'm sure by now, if you're subscribed to my channel, you've seen Weston on my show, and I mean, he's great, and it's why I have him on my show. I feel like Weston, like, you could just talk so naturally, and that's so difficult for a lot of people. Even when I started out, I feel like I wasn't very good at that, and so I think you're natural at it. I can't wait to see you grow your channel, and yeah, hopefully I get an invite on there as well. We'll talk. Let your agent
where to
speak to
find
my
me.
agent, and then we'll talk. I won't
Money
post
talks,
any,
bullshit walks, Steph.
yeah, exactly. I won't post any cryptic messages, on my story if I don't hear from you in the next couple weeks. Don't worry. But yeah, make sure you guys like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Not just mine, but Weston's as well. Look out for Island 49. But for now, have a good rest of your Monday, folks. Peace.